Commissioners Ripley and King had to leave due to prior commitment they let us know about earlier. Commissioner Teague, it's all yours.
You have to remind me where we were.
I believe that Ms. Sweeney was about to speak and we took the break. Are you ready, ma'am?
I am, sir.
Apologize. Please go ahead.
Hello, Commission. I would like to talk to you today about the turkey season in Tennessee. In particular, I'd like to cover 3 topics. The first one is a human dimensions survey pointed at spring turkey hunters, which was conducted by the University of Tennessee, primary investigator Dr. Poudial. And then I would like to go over the harvest data from 2015 and compare it with previous years. And then I would like to go over one recommendation the agency has regarding the fall bag limit. So this human dimensions study was done last year after prompting at the last season setting meeting. This is not the same human dimension study that we point out year after year at the season setting. This was a pointed, targeted survey directed at spring turkey hunters. And we did this to find out turkey hunters' evaluation of their hunting experience and their attitudes towards the hunting regulations. This is a long report, and I have copies for you that I'd like to hand out at the next break.
With due respect.
Oh, no, I would like to go over
Talk
some highlights.
fast because the next break we hope is the adjournment, but go ahead.
All right. So some of the things that stood out in the survey is that hunting on opening day was very popular with 81% participation. Hunter success seemed to be good with about 50% of those surveyed harvesting at least one bird. Juvenile participation seemed kind of low in that only about 30% of the people that were surveyed participated in the youth hunt and took a youth hunting during that hunt. Satisfaction in general with turkey hunting experience was good, with 60% satisfied and 20% somewhat satisfied, although we did see that private land hunters and, of course, successful hunters were significantly more satisfied. In particular, this report explores hunters' opinions about our current spring regulations. These 7 aspects were explored in terms of importance and satisfaction. The Likert scale rates importance from a 1, which is not important, to a 5, which is very important, and satisfaction is unsatisfied to very satisfied. And so if you look at satisfaction, you can see is on the left, and it goes from 1 to 5. And at the bottom, if there was a point at the bottom, it would be a very unsatisfactory aspect. If it was at the top, towards 5, it would be very satisfactory. And then in importance, again, over towards the 5 on the right, it would be very important. And so all 7 aspects of spring hunting seasons were at about a 4 in regards to hunter satisfaction and how important they thought they were. Now I'm going to zoom in on the little bubble at the 4, where 4 meets 4. But I think the most important thing that we can get from this graph is that hunters are, I think everything about spring hunting regulations is pretty important, and they're pretty satisfied with everything. So we zoom in, and the first thing to look at, and I hope you can see it, is the scale. You look down in the bottom left corner, and that is a 3.9, and it only goes to 4.3. And then on the satisfaction scale, you start at a 3.8 and you go up to a 4.1. So we really are nitpicking here. But it is worth looking at everything in relation to one another. At the top of the graph is season limit. Since it's at the top, we can tell that hunters are most satisfied with the current season limit. And if you go down to the bottom, we have the daily limit, and hunters are least satisfied with the daily limit. And then going from left to right, left being not as important, the least important to hunters is rules consistency. And rules consistency is how confusing the regulations are and how consistent they are from across the state. And then going all the way to the other end to see what hunters are most satisfied with. No, is what hunters are regard as the most important thing is the season length. And now I'll move on. Oh, and go over some thoughts about the fall season. But it's important to realize that it was spring turkey hunters that were targeted when we're talking about fall season. So one thing we asked hunters was how they would feel if we changed the fall season to where they couldn't harvest hens, but they could only harvest bearded turkeys. This was not popular at all. Only 18% found this an acceptable change. Hunters are satisfied with the timing of the season. They find it a very important season. If you mesh the extremely with the moderately, you find that 97% of hunters find the fall season important. And about 41% of spring hunters participated in the fall season. Now I'd like to review the harvest data in regards to the 2015 turkey season. Spring harvest, of course, is top with almost 30,000 birds harvested. Young sportsmen came in at about 1,000. WMAs came in at about 1,600. And about 1,700 turkeys were harvested during the fall season for a total harvest of about 35,000 turkeys. Now, if we look at the spring turkey season and break it down by harvest per hunter, you can see that about 2/3 of hunters harvested one bird, and then another 20% harvested two. Now, this is the same slide that Mark showed you, and it shows turkey harvest over time. Now, it's easy to fall into thinking that we're looking at turkey population, but it's important to keep in mind this is harvest. But we can look at it as a very rough index of how the turkey population is doing. When we look from 1989 up to about 2000, with a steep incline, we can tell that the turkey population was increasing. However, when we reach this plateau, we're not real sure what's going on, although we did expect it. And so I'd like to zoom in on this plateau, and this is shown in this slide, which spans about 15 years. Overall, despite the rough fluctuations for a couple years, it's stable and with a little increase. And now we'll break the same depiction down by region. Now, region 2 ends up on top, and that's the white line, and that's because they harvest a significantly higher amount of turkeys as compared to the rest of the state. 1 is the next line down, and then 4 and 3 are about on top of each other. And now I'm going to put a trend line. And you can see that region 2 is different than the rest of the state, and we're concerned that this is a downward trend. Now we can take a look at our fall harvest statewide. Fall harvest started in about 1998, and it's been it's fluctuated a lot over time. And one thing I'd like to point out is that our regulations have also fluctuated a lot over time. And so it's definitely not a good idea to use this as an index for population. But if you break this down by region, the top line on this graph is a little different than the last one I showed you. It's the state. I stuck it on there so you can see how close region 2's line is and see how many turkeys in the whole state are taken in region 2 during the fall season. And then we'll break fall season down by sex. And you can see about 2/3 of the turkeys that are taken are female. And now I'd like to go over our recommendation regarding the fall season. We recommend reducing the fall bag in 18 counties in Region 2, which is in Middle Tennessee. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of all that, I'd like to go over our rationale. the 5-year statewide spring harvest has declined. And we looked at that. If you look at the last 5 years, throughout the whole state, it has been a decline, but it's most severe in Region 2. And if you look at the 15-year trend, the trend line is negative in Region 2. Also, on the ground, our biologists, our technicians, hunters, landowners, everyone is reporting reduced sightings of large fall flocks and summer poults. It's also important to note that in Region 2, they've got the highest fall bag limits in all of the state, with 6 in some counties. We recommend dropping these fall bag limits as a precaution due to the declining harvest trend that we've been looking at. And this would also benefit us in standardizing the fall bags to where in the whole state, it would only be per county, either 0, 1, 2, or 3. So in these following counties, we recommend reducing the fall daily bag limit from 6 to 3. Bedford, Cheatham, Davidson, Franklin, Hickman, Murray, Marshall, Montgomery, Macon, Robertson, Rutherford, Smith, Sumner, Trousdale, Williamson, and Wilson. And for Lewis and Lincoln, we recommend reducing the fall daily bag from 3 to 1. So the yellow counties recommend dropping the fall bag from 6 to 3, and the orange counties from 3 to 1. And this concludes what I have for you in regards to turkeys, and it's also what we all have for you in regard to the big game proclamation.
Questions?
I've got one. Joy, if nobody on the commission's opposed to it, I think I've talked to Mark about it, and I think he's asked the reason. But I would like to see the youth hunt where you can kill one bearded turkey a day instead of one the whole weekend. It would still go against your statewide season, but I don't see any reason not to let them have the same limit as the adults do, if nobody's opposed to that.
I thought we were having some questions about turkey population in Giles County.
Giles County is currently closed.
Oh, it's
The
closed,
the
okay.
fall bag limit was dropped in 2014.
I thought we'd done something with it last year, so
It was the year before last.
Anyone else?
When this comes back before us in May, I would suggest that you have some other shading on there that says what counties are closed, particularly in light of the proposal that we're being asked to consider.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? If you don't have anything else, I guess we will move on.
All right. I'll turn it over to Roger Applegate.
Great, thank you for this opportunity. I have the easiest job of the whole thing. I only have 45 slides and a lot of changes. No, just kidding. Comic relief here because it's been a long day. I have this particular slide here just as a highlight again, because we need to, Dan already presented all the rationale and the issues relating to providing some opportunity for raccoon possum hunting to take place on the bear reserves, and so we will have that language inserted into this fur bear proclamation as a way to help provide that opportunity. So that's really what I have to talk about. Very quick, one slide. Fastest one for the day.
I have something, I've had a group I've been talking to that we're actually on this subject to some degree, but they're looking for some possible increased opportunity for raccoon hunting season, possibly opening it some period earlier, not early enough that it would impact populations or their reproduction, but is that something we could get some information on, or is there any possibilities of that?
There is, actually. I think we could, we've talked about this and considered this a bit in the course of our meetings, and I think we could do something along the lines of, I think it would have to be restricted to private land, so it wouldn't, pose any issues with our areas or with any of the federal lands and so on that we have to really work with. But from standpoint of private lands, and I think this would be something helpful to like farmers with corn depredation problems with, coons in the corn and so on. But we could probably do something like 1st of July, if that was a suitable time to hunt, to have that additional hunting. And we could run that continuously, really, because our regular season opens third Saturday in September is our regular season. So that coincides with the normal take time. And something something just to mesh with that. In other words, run in so that, that regular season opens at sunset on that third
Friday in
the
September.
third Friday. And we could run it from the 1st of July, do a closure at sunrise on that same day that the other season opens, and a shift from that season with maybe something a little more conservative, like a one raccoon a night per party sort of a situation. If that's something that would be.
I think that would be exactly along the lines of what they were hoping for. It basically pertains to, there's obviously already a training season, but the way it's set now, there's obviously situations where they have a dog that's never actually seen a coon, and they might be, 18 months old before they legally can look at one closely. So that was, they've been on me for like years about it, and they'd ask if they needed to do the email bombardment and everything else, and I said, well, let's give them an opportunity to see if there's something that won't affect another user group or have any negative impact to the population. But the nightly take was not really important. It was more just the ability to have a chance to, let a dog see how the hunt goes for training purpose. So, yeah. And as far as starting in July, whatever meshes with your calendar, first, if you want to make it a standard date to avoid some of the whatever, they're going to be more than happy with any kind of expansion.
If we did something like July 1, we could just set it July 1, realizing, of course, that's going to be a different day. Won't be a Saturday or a Friday or anything like that.
Whatever works. If you want to make it first, whatever's
Saturday,
easiest for our book and staying with what we've done on other, maybe first, if it's first Friday or whatever it is, whatever makes it work, so.
I'll have that written up for you in May
Thank you.
for you to consider.
Anyone else have a comment or question for?
Okay, let's see.
Quick one. Thank you.
Joy's back, so.
All right, I'm back, like Roger said, and I'd like to talk to you about recommended changes for the WMA proclamation. And the first thing to note is that we recommend changing the title of the WMA proclamation. Right now, it says wildlife management areas, but it really does cover public hunting areas and refuges. And we're using the term public hunting area in a new way. The TCA code defines agency lands in 4 different ways, either as public hunting areas, refuges, or state fishing areas, or wildlife management areas. And in the past, we've used public hunting area to mean a large tract of land which we lease. But we don't really have that anymore. We had a permit system set up. They were called public hunting areas. But we don't have those anymore, and we'd really like to use it the way it was intended to begin with. According to TCA code, a public hunting area is a specific land or water area, or both, that's not intensively managed. That's established for all the reasons that our lands are all established for consumptive use and non-consumptive use and wildlife protection. We recommend using PHAs. And the difference between a PHA and a WMA is that a WMA is intensively managed. And so the PHAs, we've been undergoing in the past few months proclaiming a lot of lands that we've had for a long time that we haven't proclaimed. And so in order to communicate to you and the public what we've got and what it is, we're now going to use PHAs, and we're going to declare seasons for all these lands that we've been proclaiming. And so in Region 1, there's 7 new areas. There's Beeson Creek, WMA, Beach River, WMA, Chambers Creek, WMA, Colonel Forest V. Durand, WMA, Grays Creek, Perry Switch, Spring Creek. And we would like to make all these areas open with the statewide seasons, except closed to fall turkey hunting. And that is consistent with all the other WMAs that are in Region 1. In Region 1, on Thorny Cypress, we would like to make a dog training season that spans from September 1st to October 31st. We recommend this because it would reduce interference with habitat management, and it would also be consistent with the neighboring WMA called Bogota. In Region 2, there were 2 new areas that were recently proclaimed. This is Cowan Swamp PHA, public hunting area, and Shady Park public hunting area. We recommend setting seasons as same as statewide. Also in Region 2, we recommend adding on Laurel Hill WMA a 2-week goose season in the fields only, and this would be a new opportunity. In Region 3, there's been 5 new areas that have been added. In 3 of them, Anderson Pond, Battle Creek, Whites Creek, we recommend opening these same as statewide seasons. On Hampton Crossroads and Long Branch PHA, we recommend same as statewide seasons except with deer archery equipment only. Not just the archery season, but just using archery equipment. And then on Blackburn Fork, WMA, making that same as statewide seasons, but with a dog training season that lasts from September 1st to March 15th. On Catoosa WMA in Region 3, we recommend removing the quota from the young sportsman deer gun hunt. And we recommend this because it was a public request, and it also will increase participation during this hunt. In Region 3 on South Cherokee WMA, we recommend removing the prohibition of tracking devices for squirrel dogs. This was also a public request, and it would make the regulations consistent in that they would be the same for raccoon hunters and squirrel hunters. At Enterprise South Nature Park WMA, there's a quota hunt. We recommend removing it for this year. We've been watching the deer herd closely there, and we have an agreement with Hamilton County to reduce it, and this goal has been achieved. We recommend instituting future hunts in order to keep the deer herd below carrying capacity. In Region 3, at Bridgestone Firestone Centennial Wilderness, we recommend to allow hiking during big game hunts that don't allow the use of firearms. This has been a public request, and we recommend this in order to accommodate multi-user group activities. In Region 4, there were 3 new areas that have been recently proclaimed. Henderson Swamp Public Hunting Area, Big Springs Access Public Hunting Area. In those areas, we recommend opening same as statewide seasons with some exceptions for small game hunting. And then in Mullins Island Public Hunting Area, open this same as statewide seasons. On North Cherokee WMA, we recommend to go ahead and set the bag limits for antlerless take. And we did this because we anticipated a change in the county antlerless bag limits and wanted to secure the bag limits on this area. And the same goes for Foothills WMA. Same exact thing, set bag limits for antlerless take. And that is the end of recommended changes for wildlife management areas, public hunting areas, and refuges proclamation.
Who's first? Go ahead.
Joy, I have two questions. So did I understand you say that the PHAs are former WMAs that are now just designated as PHAs?
The PHAs are land that we held that we didn't declare, that we didn't proclaim. We just had it. We bought it, and we didn't, it was just land we had that was huntable, but we didn't proclaim it. And mostly because they were little bitty areas, under 100 acres, that we didn't really know what to do with. But once the what we used to call public hunting areas, which were vast tracts of like timberland, held by a timber company, that we had a permit system set up. Well, once those went out of phase, then it opened up this opportunity to use this new term, or old term, to reorganize and recategorize and better display for you and the public our lands and what they are.
So folks did not know that existed then, really, that this is going to be new areas for folks to go to that they otherwise didn't know was even there?
For the most part, unless you're locally familiar.
Okay, and it says the PHAs are not intensively managed. How will it look, other than being smaller, how will it look different as the hunter goes there to hunt? What's going to be different about it than one that's intensively managed?
There's just not any, like, on the ones that are intensively managed, you know, we're making habitat changes as far as maybe doing controlled burns, or we're putting in forage, or we're doing, making waterfowl impoundments. And then on these areas, you just won't see much of that. We may mow it, but they're so small, it's really difficult to take your equipment from your main equipment station to a little tiny area out in the middle of nowhere.
I have a question. So on the Bridgestone WMA, we're now going to allow hikers during bow season?
Essentially, that is the recommendation. And I've got, yeah, that's essentially the recommendation. I'll go back to that slide.
I mean, there's 200 and something days that there's not a hunting season. Why would we not have hikers then? Why, I mean, I would be very upset if I had my favorite spot and some person come in with 2 dogs and they're lollygagging right through my hunting. I don't understand what brought this up.
If you don't mind, I'd like to call on Kirk Miles to go into detail. He's most familiar with this area.
Kirk Miles, Region 3. To answer your question, what brought this up? Like you see up there, it's a request from the public, primarily, obviously, the hiking community, to asking us to allow them, actually, they probably, I think I'm safe to assume, they would prefer hiking during all of our big game hunts. And this recommendation is allowing hiking only during our archery hunts on Bridgestone.
Are we not setting a precedent then for all our WMAs?
What WMAs have hiking during the archery season right now?
In Region 3, this would be the only exception to that.
If you don't mind, I'd like to comment on that as well. I can cover the rest of the state, not just Region 3.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Bledsoe, let me clarify that. With the exception of South Cherokee, where we have to work with the Forest Service and that area, but as far as properties that we solely control, in Region 3, this would be the only one that we would have this exception.
Hey Kurt, do you know how many animals were harvested during the bow season there last year on that particular management area?
Not off the top of my head, Commissioner Baker. It's not, actually, it's going to be a low number, I think, if you just look at archery season, but we can probably get that real quick and get it right to you.
That'd be great, thanks.
Can I cover the rule?
Can I make a comment on that, please? I live, okay, I'm
Excuse me,
sorry.
let's give her a chance to answer. Thank you.
Commissioner Bledsoe was asking about setting precedent, and we kind of looked into this, and there's a rule, and what it does is it closes all areas to non-hunters during the big game season. And so the only time you can make an exception for this is if you proclamate it. And we have proclamated this for Bridgestone Firestone, in fact. Right now, it is open during spring turkey hunts after 12 o'clock noon. Also, on Forks of the River, same thing. It's open for spring turkey hunts after 12 o'clock noon. There's also an exception made for Cherokee, North Cumberland, Tellico Lake, and LBL, as they're always open for non-hunting activities. And then, let's see. And then Forks of the River is made another change, exception, as from September 6th through February 29th, they're closed to non-hunting activities except for on the weekends after 12 o'clock noon.